Shabbat Shalom. If I can be heard, please type a 7. Grace and peace. Can I be heard? Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me? Please type a 7. Yep, microphone's on. Okay, thank you. Shabbat Shalom to everybody coming in. Shabbat Shalom. Give me one more minute and we'll start. Okay, you know what? We'll get ready to start right now. One love to all coming in. As always, all praise and glory to Jah, our Father and His Son, Jehoshua, the Messiah of Nazareth, also known as Yahshua, Yahawashai, Yeshai HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ, Jeshua, Yeshua, Yahusha, the anointed of the Most High, the only begotten Son. Let us pray. Our Abba, which art in Shammai, Kodesh be thy name, Jah. Thy Malkuja come, thy will be done in Eretz as it is in Shammai. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us for our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us out of all temptations, and protect us from all evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. And the authority and love of your Son, Jehoshua, we always pray. So be it. Today is the 17th day of Kislev, the 19th scriptural month for the year 6222 from creation, equivalent to October 22. One second as you just look at the almanac, and here is our day. I'll be back in like 10 seconds or so. Again, one love and Shabbat Shalom to all coming in today. Hope that the Most High gives you understanding and the Spirit is present, that I may speak truth and you may hear the truth and understand it as well. This is a deep topic. But here we are on the 17th, as you can see on your screen. And we have 2 more Sabbaths until winter, official winter. And as you know as well, in Toronto at least, we got our first frost on Friday, or come in Thursday, Friday. And these are annual events. I follow the frosts greatly. I tend to have all the collections from the last probably 10 or so years of the Farmer's Almanac. And the frost dates are there. And so when a frost comes, this is something to know, is like when you have a frost in your area, it's usually followed by either that same day or the within 24 hours of about 5 days to a week of warm weather. And they call that Indian summer in the world. So that's how you can understand certain things that way. But winter will be upon us soon. And in November 6th, as you can see, it's November 5th, it ends. November 6th, bottom left, Tibet, winter starts. And it's gonna snow and rain. Of course, in November, it's the latter rains. And remember, we did a lesson on that last week. But next, after next Sabbath, there's the 24th. We look at the 25th. That's also the Feast of Dedication. So next Sabbath, we'll do a little bit of a read on the Feast of Dedication. Excuse me, from Maccabees, and cover a couple of other little things. But I think we'll focus on Maccabees, and because it's such an extensive read, we might, of course, split it up into Sunday and as well as Saturday, as well as maybe the Sunday, the 24th. And then the 25th, I might do a read that afternoon as well. for about an hour. And you'll get more information on that. And you can see the information about dedication on your screen. So, Revelation of Jah's Calendar, this lesson is entitled The Moon and the Month. And this is the book cover for The Moon and the Month concerning the scriptures that was written by the late David Ray. And we're going to get into some, discussions. And I always put moon and month into many of the lessons. It is quite an extensive piece of information. However, I usually save the first part that I usually do for last and the last first. So I'm going to try to bring it around and move at a good pace. If there are any questions about things, because this is a deep topic. And when I get into this topic, I have to say this, like at times, I like to use Strong's Concordance to help bring an understanding. And there are some translation errors. There are some things that I feel that have been omitted. Some things I feel have been inserted. Now, I'm not trying to say I have the authority to know what is what that way, but the Most High is going to guide us. And usually, there's a theme and an understanding, and there's a lot of verses that will support a certain doctrine. And sometimes it's good to get a translation from Strong's, whether it's a Hebrew translation or Greek, because it can maybe give a fuller understanding. But for the most part, using the King James English Bible, I find that most doctrines can be proven that way. And I say most, except today's. And so today, when we get into this topic, it's I'm going to be just talking about basically these words. The words new moon should not be in the English translation. And it could be a tight one for people, but we're going to get into it. And I think that you'll appreciate this understanding. And I have to say, this is an understanding that, some people know. Usually people who follow or are learning about the Enoch calendar, 364, they don't use the lunar solar calendar that other Israelites and Christian groups use, which is false. You shouldn't have lunar months, and we're going to kind of destroy that today. But there's an understanding. So there's some videos out there that kind of, I have to study them and as well and do my own little research, but people have this information out there, and it's just good to know. So we're going to be dealing with new moon, new month, the beginning of months, and there'll probably be a couple of mini topics in there. So let's get into it. Again, bless up to those who are coming in this lesson here. Now, the Most High's calendar was first given at creation in the beginning, and it is foundational. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, Elohim made the heaven and the earth. Then it goes on later on to end, and the evening and the morning were the first day. So the Most High's calendar begins on day one. And we're going to have a little bit, look into this controversy, whether it's the sun, moon, and star calendar or whatnot. But let's just use our wisdom. Day one was the beginning of time, beginning of creation. So that's the beginning of the calendar. And then the Most High's calendar was re-given in Egypt before the Exodus and the law, and it's even more foundational. Exodus 12:1. And Jah spake unto Moshe and Aaron, saying, in the land of Egypt, saying, this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. So I'll just start by saying this. People believe, of course, that the lunar cycle is what is being referred to as a month, a lunar month, let's call it. And we teach greatly that it's not a lunar month, but it's a measurement of Jah's days, and we have to use the scriptures that come up to 364. But I'm not going to cover that today. But people would read this and say, this moon shall be unto you the beginning of moons. It shall be the first moon of the year to you. And so that's folly right after bat, and you can see that they're in Egypt right now. And again, we're going to get into this, but the lunar cycle should not be used for scriptural months. They mess up all the seasons. And if you saw my lesson on 12, they use 13 months and 19-year cycles, very evil numbers in the scriptures. So therefore it's unscriptural. Let's continue. So the first 24-hour day, like Genesis 1:1 through 5, verse 5, was the first day of many cycles of time. And this is what I want you to really understand. Day one of creation was the first day of the following. the first day of the true original almanac, the true calendar. That's when the calendar begins. The Father himself said the evening and the morning were the first day of all cycles. The first day of the 24-hour evening and morning cycle. So the evening and the morning make a 24-hour day, 12 hours of night, 12 hours of light. Averagely and respectively, of course, we know throughout the seasons there's a different amount of hours allotted, but 24 hours still reigns. It's the first day of the weekly cycle. Obviously, the 7th day Sabbath was counted from the first day of creation. It wasn't counted from any other day but that first day. It's the first day of the first month, which we would call a Bib in the scriptures. We don't deal with Nisan at all. That's Babylonial, but it's the first day of the first month. It's the first day of the first season, which we could call spring or the latter rains. Again, spring might not be scriptural per se, but it's understood what we mean by spring, dealing with waters. It's the first day of the first yearly cycle, and it's the first day of the first 7,000 year cycle of time. Now, once you have this is a foundation, right? And it's a cornerstone, a chief cornerstone of time and everything that follows with the Most High's calendar. Once you really understand that, and you can, it's really simply put, right? But we're gonna have to, show a little bit of an understanding. But it's very important to get this, because if you don't understand this part, you might get swept away into the doctrine that, calendars begin from the fourth day of the week when the sun, moon, and stars are made, which is the middle of the creation week. And you know how I am about that middle thing. Jah's origination week was also 7 24-hour dates. So remember, we have days and dates. They go hand in hand. So as you see on your left, day 1 of creation, Genesis 1:1, is week 1, month 1, season 1, year 1, which is 24 hours. That'll be a Bib 1. Then we have a Bib 2, we have a Bib 3, we have a Bib 4, 5, 6, and 7. But remember, I said Jah's calendar doesn't begin from day 4. So again, watch this count. This is where things begin from, and not from day 4. Very important to grasp. Most calendar people and dissidents, they miss this altogether, or maybe it's hidden from them, right? So you can see the count, right? 1 to 7. So the first week of creation, and we're going to look at the second week of creation, just in a numerical value, day 1, day 2. Notice that the Bib 1 is day 1. A Bib 2 changes like we just showed on the other slide. It's still week 1 though, month 1, season 1, and year 1. So we can go through this, right? And we could get to day 4. Again, it's still a Bib 4. It's not a Bib 1 beginning from here. So we're going through all the days of the week. Day 1, the calendar begins. Day 2, we have all these other things. Day 4 is where we get our sun, moon, and stars. And we have the 7th-day Sabbath being counted from day 1, not from day 4. So you're going to hear a lot of people speaking about lunar Sabbaths, much less lunar months. Can you believe that? So they have like a lunisolar year with lunar months, and then people are going to say that the 7th-day Sabbath or Holy Sabbath is set to the lunar cycle. And it's a very popular doctrine. And this, as much as I talk strong about what I believe in, they talk just as strong, have a few charts, but you have to pay attention. Just like you have to pay attention to anyone, be a Berean, and search. And of course, a little bit of wisdom. So let's say if it was a lunar Sabbath, right? This was right in the beginning. So that means the 7th-day Sabbath would have been 7 days from day 4. But we don't see that in the scripture at all in Genesis 1 or 2. Right off the bat, I think that just squashes the lunar Sabbath. I don't even have to get into the cycles of it. And maybe I'll say that for another time, which might even be just a 5-minute video, really, to shoot down that folly. They want you to worship the sun, moon, and stars. And this is what I want you to understand. The sun, moon, and stars were the main trappings of all nations, pagan, of Israelite nations as well. The Israelite nation, I should say, as well. When I say nations, I mean Judah and Israel that way, but Israelite nation as one. The most thing was dealing with Baal and Baalim, and that's worshiping the sun, moon, and stars. Now, when they did these things, they didn't say, oh, praise sun, oh, praise the moon. Pagan nations do it, and maybe some of the customs were picked up by Israelites. But for the most part, It was based upon holy times, right? A solar calendars for sign, season, days, and years. So they would use these special lunar times, whether it's the beginning of a crescent, a full moon, a dark moon, even eclipses would be a part of worship. And so they would have special festivals during these solar and lunar times. That's modern day sun and moon worship. The solar system is based off of sun worship. The festival of Christmas and Easter and all of those things is based upon sun worship. You understand? The lunar cycle and Babylonian cycle that people use and have new moons and all of these things are moon worship. Ishtar, right? So this Baal is the sun, Ishtar, Astarte, Esther is the moon. That's what you really have to just get that under your head as we move through. Shabbat Shalom again to everyone coming in. So this has all right, so I go back to here. You see how the sun, moon, and stars, they begin their calendar from the middle of the week, because day 4, as you can see, is the middle of the week. There's 3 days to the left, 3 days to the right. It's the same way also when they deal with their clock, the Babylon clock, when they, change things. And the Messiah says there's 12 hours in the day, meaning 12 hours in the night, right? And then we have, when we look at this calendar, let me just look at this clock right away and just explain it quickly. I know most people know about that, but as you know, days in Babylon here in the Western world change at midnight, the middle of the night. And of course, that's the middle of the night, not the beginning of the night, not the end of the night, but the middle. And as you know from scripture, we teach, and many other people believe as well, that the nighttime or the evening, which is the beginning of the night, is the first part of the 24-hour day, and then the light part is the latter half of the 24-hour day. And so 6 o'clock would be the average that you would have for being a 12-hour day rather than 12. So what they really did is they flipped things around. And when you see on your left there, when you see on the left, you'll see, it might be hard to see certain things, but it says 12 p.m. or 6 p.m., but it's actually the 6th hour. So if you look at the bottom here where it says evening and morning, so 12 right there is the 12th hour. As we go into it, like say 6 o'clock, that would be where 6 o'clock is today. So remember, if I say 6 o'clock or 6th hour is different. So if I say the 3rd hour, that's different than 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock is what you're normally used to. The 3rd hour would be, if you look on your screen, would be where we would have our 9. So that 3rd hour could be 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. The 6th hour is the middle of 12. That's when they change their days from midday and midnight and so on and so forth. When we get to the end of the 12th hour, that's the end of a 24-hour period or a 12-hour light period, right? Or a 12-hour night period, either one. So when you look at these clocks here, this is how the clock's supposed to be. This is how it is in scriptures on the left. Truthfully, and it might seem like, oh, well, who cares? And that's what everybody says. Who cares? Then why change these things, right? Nobody cares about the race of the Messiah. Nobody cares about all of these things and which calendar to use and which is the Sabbath. And that's just people being careless when they say they don't care. There's truth to these things. So this trick is a little bit in the middle. So again, looking at this week, 24-hour days and dates, we know that day 4, you cannot begin a calendar. So now we're looking at the creation week. We finished our first creation week, let's say Abib 7, week 1. Then we would have to go to the next week. And what would the next week be? If we were just using Genesis and a simple count, Abib 8 would be like we call Sunday, but it's day 1. And notice that again, I'm using day 1 a lot, and I'll say Sunday and Saturday, but there's another doctrine out there, and I never found it out until maybe a couple of weeks ago. Like, people believe that not even just it's usually the lunar Sabbath people. Usually the lunar Sabbath people believe this, but they'll say that when we keep the 7-day Sabbath from Friday evening till Saturday evening, we're using Gregorian 7-day cycle. And that's not true. It's just that the Gregorian has put itself upon Jah's calendar. I think I have a chart for that as well. So Jah's calendar is day 1 to day 7, beginning from the evening beginning with evening and morning, whereas like Saturday begins at 12 p.m. and it just mixes up the days. But again, you get the gist here. So the second Sabbath of the year would be Abib 14, right from creation, right? So we're just going to leave it there a little bit at this part here, just to set the foundation that the calendar in the beginning had nothing to do with lunar cycles. Neither did the 7-day Sabbath, and neither does the Passover. How do I know that? Well, day 14 is Abib 14. It's a Sabbath. So at the end of the Sabbath, they would kill the Passover. And let's say if there was a third week, that means day one would be the 15th if we had a third week. I didn't put it on the screen, but using your wisdom. And we know that the Passover is eaten on the 15th at evening. All right. All right. Just looking in there if anything is in the chat. All right. We're good. So here's a scriptural weekly cycle with the modern times of the Babylonian or Gregorian astronomical days. So you see, we have day one, right? From creation would be evening to evening, but day one actually starts this evening, like at 6 p.m. And because that we're on daylight saving time, I forgot to mention that too before, because we're on daylight savings time, it's 7 that we do it right now. And you know, you look outside, you can see the sun is setting a lot earlier than it was a month and a half ago. Excuse me. So again, just looking at this. So when somebody says, "Hey, man, if you keep the 7-day Sabbath using the Gregorian Pope cycles," that no, we're using Jazz cycle, but for sake of communication, we have to use the Gregorian calendar. That's what people know, right? So, like, say we say that Abib is equivalent to February, right? That way, it doesn't mean February is the standard. It just so you know where it is. February happens to be where the true scripture month Abib starts. Some will say March and April. We're not into that right now. And again, we've done many lessons on those things. So take a look at this chart, whether you screenshot it or not. It'll give you an understanding of the days. So Sabbath started last night, 7 p.m. It'll be 6 p.m. in about 2 weeks. So that's what I wanted to say. We go back. If everybody here is listening, remember this. And I'll remind you next week as well. When we do get into November 6th, which will, or November 5th, is going to be the last Sabbath of the autumn season, so to speak. November, that's that night there, they're going to go back to standard time. So for the next 2 Sabbaths, I'm going to be going from 5:30 till 7, but then in 3 weeks from now, I'm going to be going from 4:30 till 6 because we're going to go back to just time, standard time. So I hope you remember that and get that. I might put a short video to remind people. It'll be 4:30 till 6. Your Sabbaths will be from basically 6 p.m. to 6 p.m. That way, as we get into, so to speak, winter time. Shalom, Michael Monroe. Shalom. All right, so what's in the name, right? Gaia's moon. Luna is the original name for the moon, coming from Latin talk. We're going to get into a little bit of Hebrew and Greek, and that's where things get kind of weird, I'll be honest, that way. But, you know, you heard of the lunar calendar. So Luna, which is a female goddess, that was like a name that the Latins and the Greeks, along with Selene, would give to the moon, right? And that's why you got your lunar cycle and you got a lunatic. And people would teach that, you know, you're a lunatic if you follow a lunar cycle. The moon is, you're moonstruck that way. And I mean, think about all of the pagan religions. Every pagan religion that you can think of uses a lunar solar cycle and the equinoxes. Everyone, and they try to make it seem like the Most High has that, but his is different. So on your screen, you see all these different names, right? Aisha, Aranat, Artemis, Badir, Selena with a C, Selena with a C, Chandra, Crescent, Cynthia, Hindu, different names going all the way through. And you see a few more. Again, they mean basically the moon, but it's given a feminine, I guess, a feminine identity that way, although people would talk about the man in the moon. So the official name of the lesser light, which we would call moon, is Luna when you get into their science and all that stuff, right? But hence, this is where, again, you get the words lunar, lunatic, lunation. In the so-called modern Yiddish Hebrew, or what we have in Hebrew from the Strongs, you have Yeriach or Yarak. Both are for the same orb in the sky. In Greek, in the New Testament scriptures, it's Selene. Again, notice the Lene in it. It's a form of Luna. What I notice about languages, family, and this is really a good thing for you to get your mind kind of looking for. I like to, make people joggle their mind. Be careful with like you see what they with the E, the all they did is switched the E in the E here and the U and the A. Vowels. Vowels are something else. We have long vowels. A could be A sound or ah. Some letters can be silent. A, E, I, O, U sometimes could replace, each other. Sometimes where you can have the word Lena, you can put Lena, then you can put Lina. It doesn't, when I say it doesn't matter, it all depends on what language structure you're dealing with. But if you pay attention, you'll see the tricks sometimes that it's just really simple sounds. Lene, Luna, same type of thing, but they kind of keep it out. Again, it's commonly called in English the word moon. This word moon being associated with the scriptural month or months comes from, again, worshiping the goddess Mona, Moad that way, or Ma'ad that way, which is other names for the moon. And for using the word moon to deal with months, started maybe they would say the 14th century, which is like around the 1500s that way. So that's when I did the research, that's when I found out, you know, when did the word moon be associated with month? Because you can kind of see it, right? You can almost say month. So they did cognate, so to speak. But again, this is a part of the deception. So again, all cultures worship the sun, moon, and stars. They use the sun as a champion out there, as a king. And in a certain way, we don't worship the sun, but the sun represents the Most High. The moon kind of represents his wife, which would be Zion. But again, we don't worship, pray, or anything, and we don't even get into it too much. But we know the Most High is greater than the sun, and He created it. Acts 19, verse 26. Moreover, you see and hear that not alone at Ephesus, but almost throughout all Asia, this Saul, Shaul, hath persuaded and turned away much people, saying that they be no gods, which are made with hands. So that not only is this our craft is in danger to be set at naught, but also that the temple of the great goddess Diana, yes, that's Wonder Woman, that's the moon, should be despised, and her magnificence should be destroyed, whom all Asia and the world worships. And when they heard these sayings, they were full of wrath and cried out, saying, Great is Diana of the Ephesians. So look at this. This is the time of Paul. Messiah is dead. Look what most of all Asia, which was kind of the modern world at that time. We know Africa was all connected still, but we see, and the world worships, right? So each nation, each culture would have, remember the different names of the moon? That's how they would drop it. Back in Babylon, it'd be Ishtar or Astarte, right? Together, they would be known as, well, the sun would be known as Baal. Together, sun, moon, and stars are known as Baalim. That's what we'd call it. So when you worship Baal, you're worshiping the sun, moon, and stars, basically. And Lucifer is supposed to be the one, the light bringer and all of that, to be responsible for those things, which I'm sure he's got bumped off of that due to his disobedience. But again, look at these things. And again, this is where the Wonder Woman business and why they're putting out the superhero stuff in here. And Wonder Woman in the cartoon or comic, she's known as Diana, the goddess of the moon. Notice it says great goddess. So again, look at these names on your screen: Aprilis, Easter, Astarte, Diana, Astra, Diana again. Doubled it up. Selene, Luna, Mona, Nana, Isis. Oh yeah. These, Virgin Mary, if you want to call it in terms of the immaculate thing. We're not talking about Mariam or Merjam, the real Mariam, but the paganized Roman Catholic Virgin Mary. You'll always see her and this baby many times, and you'll see the crescent as well around there, as well as the sun maybe in the background. You see stars and all that around. But when you go do your own research, right, and type in moon god and everything, this Gentile Virgin Mary is going to come up a lot. So there's a lot behind these things. When you're dealing with the Gregorian calendar and its festivals, you're dealing with sun and moon worship, even though they in the Gregorian calendar they don't use lunar months, but they recognize the lunar cycle, right? They just don't deal with months that way, and you have to be kind of diligent to see how they do that. Again, ancient times, these go back way, way back. So the moon is the queen of heaven. Again, I said all these names. Jeremiah 7. The children gather wood, and the fathers kindle the fire, and the women knead their dough to make cakes to the queen of heaven. That's right, the queen of heaven is the moon. Jeremiah 44. And it says, let me finish off that last verse. And to pour out drink offerings unto other gods, that they may provoke me to anger. So again, the other gods would be the sun, moon, and stars as well. Jeremiah 44:17. But we, meaning the disobedient people, will certainly do whatsoever thing goeth forth out of our own mouth. That's how people are today. Do whatever you want, basically, to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, as we have done when we and our fathers and our kings and our princes in the cities of Judah, notice that it's Israelites here, and in the streets of Jerusalem, for then had we plenty of victuals and were well and saw no evil. So they moved away from John. They were scattered out doing things, and they were in their own ways, and they were worshiping these false gods. But life was good for them, so to speak. It was almost like they were under Satan's guidance now, so they felt they ate well and everything. And then when they came to the Most High, things began tough. Became tough for them. Other nations started, kind of roaring and grumbling against them. Things weren't, just like how they wanted it to be. But the Most High always tests us first, just like he brought the children of Israel. He rescued them, and then they went on trial or a testing period for 40 years. So we see here, look at this, the heavens. And when do you think that they did these things? That's what I want to get to the point. They didn't just every day wake up and just say, pour out drink offerings. They might have prayed. But when it became a full moon at certain times, or that crescent or the dark moon, whatever time that they want to worship, and they might even do it 4 or 5 times a month, especially for the lunar Sabbath people. I mean, just think about that. They worship, 7 days after the lunar cycle, so they're in it as well. And everyone else who deals with lunar cycles are in it as well. Maybe not knowingly. You can say, oh, it's the Most High Yah Elohim, right? But it's not his things. It's just like somebody saying, oh, Sunday's the Sabbath and I'm going to praise him and it doesn't matter. Well, it's not the Sabbath. And you can still call on his name, but you're worshiping him wrong. And that's what we have to deal with at times. People might say the right names and maybe quote some scripture, but the actual worship is devious and evil. But since we left off to burn incense to the Queen of Heaven and to pour out drinking offerings unto her, we have wanted or been in need of all things and have been consumed by the sword and by the famine. And when we burned incense to the Queen of Heaven and poured out drink offerings unto her, did we make her cakes to worship her and pour out drink offerings unto her without our men? So all the women started getting into these things, right? The attachment of the Queen of Heaven and a woman feeling good. Hey, I'm a queen too, and all of that, right? But the hot cross buns and all these things, these special cakes that are made at these certain times. Especially, I mean, Easter is one of the big red flags. Let's call it, because that's Ishtar, and we know that that's when they do their chocolate bunnies and all their paganism. Even though Christmas is loaded with it, man, Easter seems like it wants to outdo Christmas at times with paganism. All right. So this is for those who know Jazz Almanac and heard a lot of things. I want to put something quickly together if I can. All right, we have this moon festival that starts in mid-autumn, the autumn equinox, of course. It's by it's put forth by Asians, but Chinese people in particular, right? The Chinese nation, and they have their calendar. Now, one thing about this calendar is, and I'm going to show you, and they begin the year at the right time. They begin it in February, and sometimes it's just late January by about 3 or 4 days. But for the most part, the beginning of their lunar year, and yes, they use a lunar cycle, and they started in February, which is the correct month and season, but it's still a lunar cycle. And even their star and everything, you can see these stars here shaped into a crescent so people can't see it. They're going to say it represents other things. This is what they worship. And now remember, all these nations worship the sun, moon, and stars by having special festivals. And you can type up Moon Festival, Chinese Moon Festival, and get some more information that way. So here's just a few years coming. I guess it's going from 1996 coming through all the way to 2031. And for the most part, this is the beginning of their year, and they deal with paganism and rats and animals and all of that. But notice that, like, 96, 19, February 19th, just notice all the Februaries. And then late January, because remember, they're dealing with, all right, this is good to know for those people who know calendars. So the Jewish Hebrew so-called lunisolar calendar deals with the new moon nearest the spring equinox, whereas this calendar deals with the new moon after the winter solstice. But if it comes in the month of December, they don't deal with it and they'll count the next one that way. So that's what they're dealing with. And sometimes I heard it's like it's 2 new moons after the solstice. But nonetheless, it's associated with solstices and equinoxes as well. You see all the Februarys, right? All the Januaries. So they know Wagwan. And even Jazz Almanac, I think, for one of the years starts January 30th or 31st. One of the years. But everything else is February. So this is good to know. And I want you to bear in mind. So if they have their February as their moon, their new year, that means that's the beginning, their first moon. And then they're going to count, successive moons, right? Okay. Now, this moon festival is a mid-autumn festival. And for those, again, who know about certain things in scripture, check this out. The Moon Festival, also known as the Mid-Autumn Festival or the Lantern Festival, takes place each year on the 15th day of the the 8th lunar month. Wow. Watch the connection, family. This is true. This is the date of the autumn equinox as well, when the moon is at its farthest point from the earth and hence appears bright and completely round. This is where you get your harvest moons. You have about 3 or 4 of them within the autumn season. Traditionally, the Moon Festival marks the end of the summer harvest. To the farmers of China, the festival is a celebration of thankfulness for heaven's bounty. Moon cakes are part of the special festivity. But, family, what do you see here? The first point. Notice when they have their lunar festival. It's the 8th lunar month. Yeah, on the 15th day. Sound familiar? All right. If you don't know, you're going to know now. So this is how people drop things, right? And I've shown this many times. So if you look at it, they'll say, hey, Sep means 7, it's the 7th month, Oct means 8, so on. And then February would be the 12th month, and March would be the 1st month. One of the tricks that the devil likes to use is kind of flip-flop. So he has the tactic of being in the middle and splicing something in half, but he also has saying, hey, that's the end of something, not the beginning, or that's the beginning of something and not the end. And you notice that February is considered the 12th month when it comes to the spring equinox type of calendar, right? Even though from the Gregorian calendar, it's the 2nd month. But when you deal with March as being the spring equinox in the 1st month, February becomes the 12th. But February really is the 1st month of Jazz Almanac. And so I want to read a little scripture from Jeroboam, but you could see Jeroboam's calendar, and that is being in use today greatly by those who use the Jewish lunisolar calendar. But the Chinese guys give it away clearly. And of course, they're part of Babylon too, right? They do their thing. So you see on your screen, January would be the 12th month, according to Jazz calendar. February is the 1st month, and I proved this many times, and we'll have to go another time and do it maybe a few weeks from now. So truly, the 2nd month, mid-spring, is March. Remember, the spring equinox that we teach is the middle of spring. All right. So let's take a look. Remember, we're talking about this Chinese thing. So if February is the 1st month of Jazz Almanac, that's true. And now we know that the Chinese calendar uses February as the 1st moon. Good starting point, right? That's correct. Then that means if you count moons, Where do you think it's going to take you? Their eighth moon is going to take you to September. Understand? Their eighth moon. And now I want to get into something. And this is going to be quick. 1 Kings 12. And Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month, on the 15th day of the month, like unto the feast that is in Judah, sacrificing unto the calves, and so on and so forth. Verse 33. So he offered upon the altar which he had made in Bethel the 15th day of the 8th month, even the month which he had devised of his own heart, and ordained the feast unto the children of Israel. And then this mashes up Israel. But what do you see here? You see the 8th month, the 15th day of the month. And then you have this lunar calendar, the Chinese lunar calendar, which has the echo of it. And so does the Jewish lunisolar calendar. It's just that the Chinese calendar kind of brings it out more clearly, because people think that September is the 7th month. But it's the 8th lunar month. It's not the 7th month at all that way, right? Now I'll show you with another chart. So again, I've showed this before, I think maybe even last week. But we have Jaz, this is Jaz True Things. This is Jaz True Month. A bib equivalent to February is what we teach. And this is the month order. When we get down to the 7th month of Jaz calendar, which is in August, that's when it's Ethanim, when we have trumpets, atonement, tabernacles. We do that in August. Some people are just finishing off right now, tabernacles. My. So that means the 8th month of Jaz Almanac would be in September. We call that Bull, and that's when the autumn equinox occurs. Now, when we look at the false order of months here, and we're looking within this red box, this is the lunar calendar. So you see that February, we know Jaz February is going to be the Chinese lunar calendar, right? So let's say they would have one up here. I mean, we could even use the true order. Their 8th month, the Chinese, is going to be in September, but it's really Jaz 8th month, truthfully. But to the false Jewish lunisolar calendar, they teach that it's the 7th month. It's a double whammy. I know it's almost hard to explain. If you get it, you can type a 7 now, but I want to make sure this is understood. So September is really the 8th month of Jaz calendar. But in the world, it's the 7th month of the Jewish lunisolar calendar, the Jewish lunisolar calendar. So that's the trick. To trick people to think that the 8th month is the 7th month. And in order to prove it, we have the Chinese calendar that begins in February, and their 8th month is equivalent to the spring equinox as well, because they're using the same moon. Get it? So it's what a deception, family. But that's something to know. Right off the bat, it's letting you know lunar calendars are false. Yeah, man. Janessa put 8. Does that mean your finger missed, or you had a question? I'll move on still. I'm pretty sure it's just a slip of the finger. All right. So let's get this read here. Now, this is from the Book of Jubilees. So I consider this, no problem, sister. I consider this a reference. Now, I don't use the Book of Jubilees to prove a doctrine, but this support here lets me know that they have taken this information out, and it's good that Jessel has it somewhere. All right, so I'm going to give it a read. Yeah, no problem, Jessel. I'm going to give it a read, and let's just take it in. The Book of Jubilees, chapter 6, verse 30 to 30. And all the days of the commandment will be 2 and 50 weeks, 52 weeks of days, and these will make the entire year complete. Thus it is engraven and ordained on the heavenly tablets, and there is no neglecting this commandment for a single year or from year to year. And command thou the children of Israel that they observe the years according to the reckoning, 364 days. Not 365 and not 354, which is in a lunar cycle. And these will constitute a complete year, and they will not disturb its time from its days and from its feasts. So it's important to know that the days and the feasts, when you deal with the 364-day calendar, which is based upon the weekly cycle, the festivals will always be on the same days every year throughout the years. Now, there are sabbatical years, which doesn't interrupt nothing with the festivals nor with the weekly cycle at all, but it keeps it in harmony with the true seasons. For everything, pay attention now, for everything will fall out in them according to their testimony, and they will not leave out any day nor disturb any feast. Everything will be perfect. When it says fall out in them, it doesn't mean fall out like fall away. It's going to pan out. Everything will pan out in them, right? Or fall in accordance. But if they do neglect and do not observe them, this 52-week and 364, according to his commandment, then they will disturb all their seasons, and the years will be dislodged from this order. And they will disturb the seasons, and the years will be dislodged, and they will neglect their ordinances. And all the children of Israel will forget and will not find the path of the years, and will forget the new months and seasons and Sabbaths, and they will go wrong as to all the order of the years. And here we are, 60 years, 6,222, 2022 AD. This is right in our face very clearly. We have solar calendars, we have lunar calendars. Everything is messed up right now. The 28-year cycle is messed up, but this is why we're here, and this is why we promote the truth to be tested, right? And if there's any correction that need to be made, we always continue to correct and adjust if there is. But for the most part, everything is set like it is on the heavenly tablets. So it says that they will forget the new months, right? And they put new moons there, but they don't deal with moons at all in this section. You'll start to see. We're going to continue. Yes. Continuing. For now I know, and from henceforth will I declare it unto thee, and it is not of my own devising. For the book lies written before me, and on the heavenly tablets. The division of days is ordained, lest they forget the feasts of the covenant, and walk according to the feasts of the Gentiles or the nations. Boy, but Gentiles these days, that's for sure. Goat Gentiles. After their error and their ignorance. So again, there's an error and an ignorance in what they're doing. They're messing up the festivals and everything for Israel. Because remember, the Israelites had to keep the festivals at the appointed time, in the appointed season, on the appointed day of the week, at the appointed date. All of that has to match up. You can't just use the dates and then they shift around to different days of the week or to different parts of the seasons. No. There's an error there and the ignorance. And let's see what this error and ignorance is all attached to. For there will be those who will assuredly make observations of the moon, how it disturbs the season and comes in from year to year, 10 days too soon. You see that? 10 days too soon. So that lets you know there's going to be 354 days in their lunar cycle calendar, which they have. And then because it's 10 days short, every 3 years, because 10 times 3, 10, 20, 30, every 3 years, or sometimes every 2 years, it all depends, 3 and 2, they mix it up. That's what it's all about, confusion. They will add a 13th month year. 13 is against the scriptural count of understanding of 12, but they'll add that in order to make sure that they stay in line with the seasons. Otherwise, it would be out of whack. And here we are with this book of Jubilees showing this. For this reason, the years will come upon them when they will disturb the order and make an abominable day, or just a regular day, the day of testimony, right? That means they'll make it seem like, oh, this is a holy day, but it's just a regular day. And an unclean day, a feast day. And they will confound all the days, the holy with the unclean, and the unclean day with the holy. For they will go wrong as to the months and Sabbaths and feasts and jubilees. Wow. End of verse. So if you use a lunar Sabbath or you use lunar months and you use lunar feasts, I guess you could also have your lunar jubilees. Wrong. So you see what's happening, right? This is a very powerful reference from the book of Jubilees, which some hold greatly too. And there's quite a bit of other information regarding calendars that are a little bit valuable. Of course, I'm not going to go into it today, but this information goes with the understanding of Jah's Almanac that we promote. So if anybody says, oh, these guys use the Enoch calendar, tell them no, it's Jah's Almanac. And I want to say Almanac so they know it stands different. The word Almanac means calendar. You want to call it Jah's calendar, that's fine. But we're saying Jah's Almanac. This is unique. We're not even calling it Yah's calendar. I respect the name Yah and all of that, but I just want to put a very big smart stamp on this thing that it's Jah's Almanac from the Holy Bible. All months can be proven from the Bible, and you don't have to look up in the sky. The sun, moon, and stars would let you know the seasons and the days and years, but nothing to do with months and weeks and holy days at all. And when I say weeks, that means the Sabbath, right? I'm looking in the room. Jeroboam's calendar is still being used today to keep the false feasts. I don't see Jubilee in the Bible, or am I missing it? Yes, Jubilee is in the Bible. It's spelled Jubile, so it's only with one E, but it's the same thing. It's a pronunciation thing. So if you type in Jubile in the concordance, and let me just make sure I'm put in there, Jubile, and you will find this in, if you want to find it, I know for sure it's in Leviticus chapter 25. Leviticus 25 will give you the how to count the Jubilee years and everything in there. Good question though, brother. Let's continue. What's my time like? Okay. So a little bit of information about the star. The star and crescent is recognized as a symbol of the Islamic faith, other calendars too, other faiths. This symbol, however, is older and was originally used by the people of Central Asia and Siberia as a symbol of their sky gods. The star crescent were adopted as a symbol of Islam during the Ottoman Empire when the Turks conquered Constantinople in 1453. So on and so forth. The city of Constantinople had been using this symbol as an honor of the goddess. Look at that. It comes back again. Diana. You see it right here? Diana. In honor of the goddess Diana. See the symbol dealing with the lunar cycle. That's how we know things. Line upon line, here a little. When the Turks took over, they had stolen their flag and symbol as well, claiming it for Islam. And many other flags dealing with certain things. And when you have that 5-pointed star too, know that the devil is there. Somebody's trying to come in. Got you. You can't put it. Hide. Yeah, man. Good. These people try to come in. Get out of here, y'all. Anyhow, let's move on. You see these different flags and whatnot. Let me see if I can get this person out of here. It's probably a bot still. It's a person, boy. Let me just make sure I move them out of here. Report you routed. Promotes pornography. Report. One second, everyone. I just want to make sure I get rid of these things. Remove. Shalom, shalom, Matthew. Let's continue. Again, it's everywhere. Again, the star and crescent in the ancient Sumerian civilization symbolized Venus and moon, respectively. Showed you these images before, but again, bringing them back to your mind. So let's look at the seasons of the moon and what it's used for. Genesis 1:14. And Elohim said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night. Let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. So we see that the sun, moon, and stars are for, this is what it says, signs, seed time, harvest, and prophecy, seasons, summer, winter, cold and heat, days counting from day to day, years counting from year to year. But remember, in this verse here, notice what's missing. There's missing some things that people mess around with. There's no mention of weeks or Sabbaths. There's no mention of months, and there's no mention of holy feasts. Although some people say that when it says signs and seasons, the word translates as moed, and they'll say that that's the feast. And that's one of those words in Hebrew that it could be feast, appointed time, regular season, because a season is an appointed time as well, like winter and summer are appointed times. And so there could be a mix up. But generally speaking, that word season should be just for what it is. The sun, moon, and stars let us know the general seasons. When you look up at the sun, moon, and stars for the Sabbath day, so to speak, or for holy days, you're getting into paganism. So here are the seasons, Genesis 8:22. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. Right? These are what the sun, moon, and stars for all these things. It just said that in Genesis 1:14, 1:14. And now when Noah gets off of the ark and the rainbows in the sky, this is a part of the covenant. And it goes perfectly for what the sun, moon, and stars actually do. Now, these are some facts about people don't know about the sun, moon, and stars, or the moon in particular. This is a lie that they put out, and these are the truths. The moon, or the luna, we can call it, moves daily around the earth from east to west, just like the sun and stars. The moon doesn't move around the earth once every 28, 29, or 30 days. The phases of its light cycle takes that long, and that's two different things. The moon gives its own light. It doesn't reflect the sun's light. Now, when you go to science, they're going to go against everything. Everything that's in the scripture, they go against. So science tells you that the moon goes, we see from east to west. Science says that the moon goes around west to east, the opposite way. And you don't see that when you look outside. But they say it's an illusion because the earth is spinning this way, and then the moon is going that way, and it appears. And that's what they always do. Illusion, illusion, illusion. That's what they're dealing with. But the moon does the same thing that the sun does. It follows it's 6 months behind when you see its trajectory path. And so that's why in the summertime, the real summertime of 6 months from May till end of October, the sun is out long, right? And the moon has shorter periods and starts gaining strength near the end of that, summer season. And then in the winter time, the sun goes lower, like in terms of the heat decreases, it gets cooler, it's out shorter periods, the arc over the earth is lower, all of that. And then the moon is higher and out longer. So it's like they switch. The sun rules the summertime, the moon rules the winter time, right? And last thing they say that, hey, the moon is just this kind of mirror thing reflecting light. Scriptures tell you many times that the moon gives her light, withdraws it, and it increases. It's up to you what you want to believe. These guys are going to lie to you, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to lie to you and say, this is how it is. The Bible is wrong. But it's up to you. Where's your faith at, right? And that's what it comes down to. If your faith is in the Most High, then you have to use the scriptures to do your best to understand our environment. And he won't lie to you. That's one thing about the Most High. He's not a liar. So Psalms 104:19 says he appointed the moon for seasons, right? The sun knows it's going down. So you see, it says the moon is for seasons. And when it says for seasons, it doesn't mean for every season. It's seasons plural. There's different seasons of the moon. And when you look up this word seasons in the Strongs, I just put this here, 4150. And this is Yarak. You'll see that when you look at Psalms 104 in the Geneva Bible, it says he appointed the moon for certain seasons. The sun knoweth is going down. And that is true. And here's again the scripture right from just so you know that I'm quoting from the Geneva, I'm not making it up. Verse 19, he appointed the moon for certain seasons, seasons. So I'm just pointing out here that the moon is given a certain thing. This word season could be translated appointed times, and somebody can say, hey, it's for feasts, because one of the translations could be feasts. And they'll say that. And they'll say that's why they big up the lunar calendar. They're gonna do that. And there is a couple of challenging scriptures in the Apocrypha that has played around with this translation thing. And don't get me wrong, even after this lesson, And if I was to even go on for a longer time, it doesn't mean that people are going to give up their lunar solar calendar. They love it. It's going to be that way. They've believed a lie. And so it's never going to go away until the Messiah comes. But for those who want to come out from darkness, right, into the light of truth and worship the Most High at the true times, on the true calendar, the true festival days, well, give thanks to Jah that we're in a good time. Many people are searching out the calendars, and we're promoting Jah's almanac to the fullest. And I do believe that many people will understand it. It's just that it's not out there, and can only do so much, right, to put it out there on YouTube, and whether it's on a book or on a website. But there's a lot of people who deal with calendars, and if you know any, send them to the channel so they can, assess it out for themselves. So in Sirach, Ecclesiasticus, this is where we get this challenging kind of thing. It says the moon is the sign of feasts, right? This is what it says there. It's still this H4150 moed, and I'm trying to say it's seasons, a light that decreases in her perfection. And again, when we look at this word moed in the Strong's 4150, you can see it means congregation, feast, season, appointed, time, assembly, solemnity, all of these things it can mean. Sacred season, set feast, appointed season, right? For me, it's all about context. And for the most part, that's what it really comes down to, is context. We already read in Psalms 104 that it says the moon was for seasons, right? Certain seasons was in the Geneva. So now when we go to the Apocrypha, it says the moon is a sign of feast, and I do believe it's supposed to be seasons. But that's not even the more challenge. The other challenge I really can't get into, I'm going to bring it up, but it's like, I almost want to say, man, that's an insertion, and I don't want to cop out like that because I don't understand something or can't explain it. But it's not not understanding. It just, let me just go to it and done. So these are challenging verses about the moon, and it's kind of the same place where that other verse was, the Sirach 43. He made the moon also to serve in her season. You see that now? This is what I want to say. So the moon serves in her season. That's moed, in her moed. For a direct declaration of times, a sign of the world. And remember, this is what they say in there. I didn't do any translations yet. From the moon is the sign of feasts, which is again moed. This moed is the same word up here for season. So you notice that this trickery is going on, right? It's a season though. Otherwise, if it was the moon, then the lunar calendars are right, but they're not. Here's where it gets more challenging. It says, verse 8, the month is called after her name, increasing wonderfully in her changing, being an instrument of the armies above, shining in the firmament of heaven, the beauty of heaven, the glory of the stars, and ornament giving lights in the highest places of Jah. At the commandment of the Holy One, they will stand in their order and never faint in their watches. So verse 8, if somebody comes up with it, they're going to be like, the month is called after her name. They're going to say, see, it's right there. The moon is the month, and the month is the moon. And look, it says it's called after her name. But all right, the moon is the moon. Let's say it's called after her name. So when we have the months in scripture called Abib, Ziph, Sivan, those are the name of the months, but those aren't the name of the moon. Although some people would want to say, well, that's what the moon is. The moon is called after her, the month is called after her name. So to be honest, I don't know what's happening here, right? Because it says seasons, then it says feast, and then it says the month called after. And some people will say, well, forget it. See, whatever he's saying there, Sean's saying, Brother Sean, boom, cut that off. But you can't stop there because there's so much information, especially the things that we've already went through already. And we've only scratched the surface. I definitely will. This is part one for sure. Part two has to be just as long as this, another hour and a half. But let's move on. And again, I'm just being fair, saying, yeah, man, that's this verse here, and maybe there might be something messed up there. I don't know. But it's the only one that kind of, I would say, is like, all right, it makes it appear that the lunar cycles are what the scriptural months. Let's continue. Now, this is what I'm thinking that they're dealing with. You see, when you deal with the moon in the world, you start to deal with the seasons. Remember, the moon for certain seasons, and I know that the natives used it, the ancient cultures used these things. Who else was using these understandings? Nonetheless, we see that They have different names for the moon for certain seasons. Its brightness, how long it stays out. All of these things have been followed by the world. So for people, they'll say January is the full wolf moon. February is the full snow moon. Yet the moon cycle is only 28, 29, or 30 days long, whereas these months are 30 and 31, and even February is 28. So they just describe the moon that's in that month and they call it a name. And that's the closest I can say to say the month is called after her name. So it'd be like that'd be full wolf moon. You'll have full pink moon. And there's other types. And these are actually based upon agricultural understandings and planting. I get into gardening, and gardening deals a lot with the moon, a lot. And there's people who speak the same way I do about the lunar cycle being not for moons, and they know a lot about plants as well, and that they believe that's what it's referring to, these certain seasons. So like September, you see at the bottom left, the full corn moon, the hunter moon, all of these things, certain things happen during these times. So maybe it's referring to the month is called after her that way, but it doesn't mean that the months are based upon the lunar cycle. It's just these times of years where the moon in a year that the moon has its special characteristics. Right? You can get your free moon planting calendar online. Teaches you how to deal with the new moon planting and all kind of different when to plant in 29 days and all kind of things. And this is a not a great chart, but let's look at something like this. This will help you a bit better, knowing that if it's a new moon or the first quarter. So you see from the dark to the left, moving up, you can plant above ground certain type of plants, plant above ground during these times, these certain plants that um, certain things you could plant below ground. So these are just different understandings of when you actually can plant certain things. And when I say plant above ground, plants that are above ground, so like carrots grow underground and potatoes, whereas tomatoes grow above ground. And some people would say, when you plant the underground, you do dark. When you plant above ground, you do it when the moon is brightening and waxing. Therefore, it's like a time or season, right? Nothing superstitious we're getting into, but these are facts. For almost every plant, for almost every type of animal and creature, this is tied to the solar seasons as well, is what I'm trying to show you. Now, a lot of people don't know about moon rises and moon sets. And the only time when people talk about a moon rise usually is when they see the full moon, because that's the one that stands out the most. So when the sun sets, say 6 p.m., 7 p.m., as exactly it's setting, it's like the moon is like it's tied to it. It's coming up the same way and coming over the horizon, and it'll be a full moon, and you'll see it. So let's say look at the where it says full moon, where my cursor is. You see it says 6 p.m. and that's around when the sun would be setting, so to speak. And these are average times, right? So we have to use hourly times. It could be like 6:08 and 5:52. We're not dealing with that kind of details that way. But a dark moon, you would see it rise in the morning, right? And then it would set in the evening. A dark moon you can't even see. So you wouldn't really know unless you're following it a certain way. The waxing half moon, it will rise at midday and then set at 6 p.m. And then, or sorry, the zenith means the highest point of it or the lowest point that way. But it's usually dealing with a high point. So again, just looking at these times, you know, for your farmer's almanac, man, if you want to get into things and like little reads like this, dealing with certain astronomical phenomena that deal with agriculture, that's fine. But I am not an astrologer. I speak against that. I don't use the sun, moon, and stars for anything that way except to tell seasons and if there's prophetical signs in the future when the sun darkens and all of that. But nothing else that way. See, there's a difference in daily moonrise times throughout the year. And this how like during the springtime between February, remember we say spring is February to the end of April, you'll see that the moon by the beginning of February, it's like 70 minutes, let's say, it's doing its thing, and by the end of April it's gone down to almost 55 minutes. And that's just the difference. What that means is showing you the difference in daily moon rise time. So like it'll rise It'll be 60 minutes every day for a while, and then once it's like the sun sets, and after 3 month period, it'll be a big difference. The biggest difference comes usually in summer, where you see it's way up here at 60 minutes, and then by down to the lowest, to the equinox, it gets down to what, 30 minutes, shifting each day. So I mean, lessons can go in on these things as well, but I don't want to get too astronomical. But if you know these things, great. I just want to give you an idea and kind of get your mind and understanding what the moon could be used for, instead of people just saying, oh, it's for holy feasts. Jah gave, remember, if Jah put it in the beginning for the whole earth, and all the earth uses it, and they're all pagans, it's just for them. It's for people to see how time moves through the seasons and all of these things, and they can do their pagan holidays on it. But it's not for the Most High's holy festivals, nor his 7-day Sabbath. Solar Sabbaths are wrong. I mean, lunar Sabbaths are wrong. My bad. Lunar Sabbaths. Okay. How much time you got here, my man? Let's go through this. All right. On your screen, when we're talking about the moon, month, and new moon, this is the words going to come in with your Old and New Testament. So for moon in the Hebrew, Yeriach, Yerah, or Yerak as well. There could be one with a C there. It's different pronunciation. In the New Testament, when you see the word moon, it's Selene. When you see the word month, they'll translate it as Kodesh, Hodesh. And in the New Testament, it's men or main pronounced, right? Menstruation, menstrual means monthly. That's what menstrual means, a monthly cycle. Menstrual means, and men actually means measurement. That's all it means, measurement. And the short for men is ME. For me means measure. And this is where you get like centimeter and metron and meter and all these other words. They're all connected. I don't want to get too technical, but so when you see new, it's Kadash and Hadash. For new, I didn't put it in here, but it's Neos or Neo, like that guy in the Matrix, Neo or Neos. The words new moon, so they have new moon together. So when you see the word new moon, they're going to translate it as one word, even though it has new and moon, and new means Kadash, and moon means Yeriach. When you see the word new moon in the Bible, this is how it is. Your Strongs, click on it. It'll say Kodesh. So it has one word, and it's the same word for month that they're going to use for two words, and month and moon are two different words, and new and moon are two words. For set feast, you have Moed, Moad. The word for time is Eth, ETH, and the word for number, count, or even measure is Mene. Mene, tekel. You remember that thing with the Daniel writing on the wall? It means your days are numbered or your days are measured. And a month is just a measurement of days. And if you want to say moneth, which is in the King James Bible, original 1611, it's a measurement of time. So these are the words we're going to look at, some of them, just to show you what I mean, what the problem is. Remember, right now, I'm going to do my best to get through the next 15 minutes to show, just focusing on the word translations, that the words new moon should not be in our English Bibles at all. It should be new month or beginning of months. And of course, this is when my cat wakes up, and I'm going to, 1 second. All right, let's move. I'm going to try to squeeze this in. Oh, did I? Yeah. All right. So remember, if you don't know on my channel, check out this lesson. I put it out last week, Jah's Perfect Kingdom, or the Kingdom of 12. It goes into greatly showing many things about the number 12, how 12 is a prominent number of Jah's perfection and order, and that video is maybe about 55 minutes long. It's a recording I've done, and it also we focus on the 12 months of the year and 12 manner of fruits and all of these things. There's no mention of 13 months in the year. Actually, there's a couple of verses that just aren't there. That's what I'm trying to be funny. It's not there. Nothing about 13 months, nothing about 19-year cycles. 13 is actually a corrupt number. Remember, I showed you, again, check the video, 13 times the word dragon appears. Nimrod is the 13th in descent from Ham. They rebelled in the 13th year in the reign of Chedorlaomer. There's 13 evil characteristics that are in First Timothy chapter 2 when it lists all of these different things. 19 years cycle is also pagan, or is also an evil number. There were 19 evil kings in Israel as well, all of the Israelite kings, all 10 from the 10 tribes. So I focus on that, and I just want to catch you up to that understanding as I move on. So again, rebellion, evil, and the numbers 13 and 19 are very clear. I'm not going to get into that right now, but let's get into the translations. So we're going to look at moon and new moon in the scriptures. The word moon by itself appears 32 times in the Old Testament, and all those times it's translated from the Hebrew Yeriach, H3394, or Yara, which is like 3393. They're all right beside each other, and it is referring to the light called the moon. It's weird how 19 plus 13 equals 32, but I won't focus on that. Now, the moon appears 9 times in the New Testament and 10 times in the Apocrypha, and is translated from the Greek word Selene. Remember that one? Selene, which refers to the moon. I know it's weird. I didn't make this up. 10 plus 9 is 19. 19 times the word Selene appears. I told you there's a lot of attachment to this stuff. But let's go on. We look up for this word moon. It means Yariach. Simple. 26 times there. Moon, right? There's another form of it, 3391, Yarak. Look what they say. It means a month. And they put lunar cycle, a moon, or just a month, or calendar month. So here now we have something a little bit different. And even though they say a lunation, notice again, from this definition, it's supposed to be the same thing, moon Yeriach. And then we got Yarak, but now they put in month and calendar month. All right. So we have it. Moon means it's moon 2 times, and it's month 11 times. Interesting. So again, Strong's H339 is the word Yeriach or Yariach, depending on your pronunciation. The proper Hebrew words for moon is Yeriach with Strong's. I said that already, which always translates moon 26 times and never month. And every time the English new moon or new moons is found, it is an erroneous translation of the word month, or should be beginning of the month, or first day of the month, or simply new month. The lunar cycle has nothing to do with the scriptural month nor his holy set feasts. The feasts and months are established by Jah's appointed time, not the moon. And you can read Leviticus 23 for that. No mention of the moon. These are all the times that you can find this word Yariach. You notice how this spells also Yareach. Again, different pronunciations of this Hebrew word for moon. There's our verses. Screenshot that or watch the video another time. I'm not going through those. Another word for moon is Sahar Onim, which means, as it says there, a moon, a crescent as an ornament, right? So again, a completely different word. Sahar Onim. And it's round like tires like the moon, or an ornament. That's what it translates as. Also, you have Labana, moon as white. So talking about like basically maybe almost like a full moon, or the moon is just white, because it doesn't matter if it's full or not. It's still going to be the same color. So again, Labana, just showing you these different understandings. Now the word, here's where we got to pay attention. The word moon only appears 4 times in the book of Moses. This is our big, is it in Torah? Right? Is it in the law of Moses? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy? 4 times the word moon appears. 4 times. in the law. So if there's anything about dealing with the moon and when people want to talk about it, shouldn't it be in the law, right? Let's take a look what we get when we read these words. Genesis 37:9. And this is regard to Joseph. I'm just going to read the red to save time. The sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. So again, Joseph was having a dream. He told his brothers, he's dreamed another dream, and the sun and moon and the 11 stars were worshiping him. We know that from the context, the sun was referring to his father Jacob, and the moon was referring to the mother, and then we had the 11 stars. You understand? Deuteronomy 17, 2 through 5. Here's a big one now. If there be found among you within any of your gates, which Jah thy El giveth thee, man or woman, that hath wrought wickedness in the sight of Jah thy Elohim, in transgressing his covenant, and hath gone and served other gods, and worshipped them, either the sun or moon, or any of the host of heaven, which I have not commanded. Very serious verse. What did Jah tell us about worshiping the sun, moon, and stars? Anything? There's nothing in there, let them be for signs, seasons, days, and years. There's no command in there to worship them and honor them or have special days. Because seasons is just seasons. Now, if you want to make it be feasts, now you're going to be going against what the Most High commanded. He didn't command us to go worship. And also it says any of the host of heaven, right? And remember, worship and serving are also the same thing. And it be told thee, and thou hast heard of it, and inquire diligently, and behold, it be true, and the thing certain that such abomination, what is wrought in Israel, then thou shalt bring forth that man or that woman which have committed that wicked thing unto thy gates, even that man or that woman, and shalt stone them with stones till they die. It's a serious thing. And again, how do you know how to worship the sun, moon, or stars? It usually comes down to calendars, family. I'm telling you, that's what it comes down to. Calendars are a big thing, and as the future moves on, there's going to be a kind of a great division if Jah brings forth more power to Jah's almanac, which he will, whether it's through us, me, or any of you hearing me now, it's going to go through. Jah's word won't return back to him void. The word moon again only appears 4 times, continuing Deuteronomy 4:19. Unless thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, and when thou seest the sun. So now when you look up into heaven and you see these things, and think about this. When the Most High gave his calendar, he didn't say, hey, look, this moon is the beginning. He didn't tell him to look up or anything like that. And look at how he's using some, very explicit language here in this verse. Unless thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, and when thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars, even all the host of heaven, shouldst be driven to worship them and serve them, which Jah thy El had divided unto all nations under the whole heaven. That's in Genesis 1:14. So he's not telling you go to serve them because he gave them to all nations, not to serve him, but just for their use. Deuteronomy 33:14. As for the precious fruits brought forth by the sun, and for the precious things put forth by the moon. Again, showing us the sun and moon, they're dealing with certain seasons. So that's it. That's it for in terms of all the time the word moon appears in the Torah, from Genesis to Exodus. Now, the phrase new moon, you know how many times that appears in Torah? The phrase new moon. 0, right? I should say 0. And people think I'm trying to be some type of Illuminati. 0, okay? There's no such term as new moon in the Hebrew text. It was always new month or the beginning of the month. The term new moon became attached to Hebrew text mistranslations after the Babylonian captivity. The term new moon became attached to Hebrew text mistranslations. English Bibles, such as the King James Version that read new moon, are without exception in error. The phases of the moon are simply irrelevant in the scheme of Jah's almanac and festivals. And aside from these mistranslations, there is no other mention of new moons or lunar months in the scriptures. All right, Michael, one love to you, and may the Most High continue to guide you and strengthen you. Fight the good fight, brother, and keep the faith. So let me see. I got a couple minutes here. The words new moon appears 20 times in the Old Covenant scripture. They appear 5 times in the Apocrypha and 1 time in the New Covenant, 26. I repeat, new moon doesn't appear anywhere in the first 8 books of the Bible. The first 8 books, so that's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth. First and Second Samuel is where you get your big new moon talk, right? That way. But the first 8 books, nothing about the new moon. So you think about that. The first 8 books. That covers the beginning of creation, the flood, Abraham and the Israelites in captivity, and then they left Egypt and went into the wilderness. Joshua brought them in. We have the story about Ruth, and then the judges for that 350 year period or so. Man, no new moon mentioned, but yet people say he gave us a lunar calendar. No way. No mention of the words new moon in the law again. In the New Testament, the words new moon is translated to be neomenia. I'll show you this. G3561, which means new month and not new moon. How do I know that? Because neo means new, and that's Strong's G3376. And mania or main means month, right? The month, sorry, might be referring to this number might be referring to the new. If it was truly new moon, then the translation would have been neo. Remember, the Greek word for moon is selene, which is new plus selene, moon. Hope I'm making sense there. It says neomania, and the word mania means month, but the word for moon is selene, yet the words new moon in the New Testament this one time, it's not neo selene. It's not new moon, like new selene or new luna. It's not. It's new month. And so there's a translation trick going on here. And the same thing is when you deal with new moon in all of the Old Testament. So let's get this verse here, and I'm almost done. Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of unholy day or of the new moon, it says there, which should be new month, or of the Sabbath days, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of the Messiah. So first of all, this scripture is not teaching against keeping the holy days. It's saying, don't let nobody, while you keep these holy things, don't let nobody judge you, because these things are going to be judged by the body, the assembly, the Most High, and the Messiah is the head of the assembly. So continue to eat clean meats, continue to keep the Sabbath day, the holy days. And when you start to learn about the new months, you will understand how to observe them in a certain way. And when you get these things, don't let nobody judge you. Again, this word new moon, G3561, is pneumania. Pneumania. So again, moon in the New Testament, selene, right? Just gonna make sure you prove it so you can see it. Where you get your word selena. Neomania. They say it means new moon of the Jewish festival of the new moon. Right after that, I know that they're dealing with something corrupt when they come into that. This should be new month, because when you look up this, it's a compound, right? This word here, main, month. It's not selene. Again, new in the New Testament is neos, recently born, young, youthful, new, right? Month in the New Testament is men. It's our main, mene, which means a month. Now, this could, again, the second thing is going to say the time of the new moon, the first day of each month. When the new moon appeared was a festival amongst the Hebrews. So even the concordances have messed up these things too, but they've also kept it just as a month. So they're always going to have an insertion here of something. But a new moon and a new month are two different things. New lunar cycle, something different than from a scriptural new month. Has no attachment to it. Again, month equals moneth. This is from etymology, where this word comes from, month. It means 1/12 part of a year, one of the 12 parts in which the calendar year is arbitrarily divided In the Old English, it's moneo, from Proto-Germanic me noth, sources of Old Saxon ma noth, Old Frisian mon ath, Middle Dutch manet, Dutch maand, Old High German manod, monat, maneor, menops, menon. Now they say it might be related to moon here. But a moon, originally the month was the interval between one new moon and the next, a sense attested from late Old English. This is what they're dealing with here. It says its cognates mean only month in the Roman languages, but in Germanic they generally continue to do double duty. The development of the calendrical meaning for words from this root in Greek, men, that's for month, and Latin mensis, was accompanied by the creation of new words for moon, which were Selene and Luna. See, they had to make sure that there was a difference. So when the word month and moon started to get mixed up, they said, hey, you know what? Let's keep with Selene, stick with Selene and Luna in order to distinguish from a month. So again, it's not Neo-Luna, it's not Neo-Selene. They say it's Neomenia, which means new month. Now notice the spellings with the moneth, because when you go to this King James 1611 version, you're going to see something. And this isn't the verse here, but 1 second. By measure hath he measured the times, and by number hath he numbered the times. And he does not move nor stir them until the said measure be fulfilled. Another word for measure again could be mene. Number is mene again, numbered. So notice what it's about, him measuring the time and numbering these times. And they don't move. He keeps them in order. So when we look at the word month in the original 1611 version, and let's just look at Exodus 12 alone. And the Lord spake unto Moses, or see as the spelling, unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, this moneth shall be unto you the beginning of moneths, measurement of time. It shall be the first measurement of time of the year to you, moneth. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this moneth. And in the bottom, in the first moneth, on the 14th day of the moneth at evening. Ye shall eat it until the 21st day of the moneth at evening. What I'm showing you here is that even when you just look at it simply, it's not dealing with no moon. It's a measurement of time. It's a month. And I just used the old 1611. You can get the same thing from the Geneva or Old English translations. I guess I think I am finished. Going to leave it for... Yeah, there's quite a bit here. So I want to leave it at that. Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. I got to mark where I'm going to leave it, and I'll continue. Not next week. I might continue sometime soon, or maybe a couple weeks after, but I'm going to leave it here. And I just want you to remember that, again, the words new moon don't appear in any books of the law or Torah. And as a matter of fact, the words new moon aren't even in the first 8 books of the scripture. When you tune in again to part 2, look for part 2, Moon and Month part 2, you'll see how the times where they put the words new moon in the scripture, I'll be showing you. When you look at Old English Bibles, like the Geneva, which came out about 70 years or even 100 years before King James, and King James uses the Geneva Bible for its translation. But when it has the words new moon in those translations, it says the beginning of the month. It doesn't use the words new moon. And many times, it doesn't use it. A couple of times the translation still slipped in, but for the most part, I'll show that another time because it's going to take too much time. We've got another hour to go. So, one love, all praise to the Most High Jah and His Son Jehoshua, who died for our sins, that we may have eternal life. Continue to keep the commandments, and keep the faith and the testimony of the Messiah. Continue to study. If you can maybe thumbs up this. If you want to ask me any questions, put it in the comments, not really in the chat. Well, chat if it is right now, but you can put in the comment. Check out the channel, spread it around, help it grow. And, with it, a lot of these things comes great controversies. So be strong, family. One love. I do appreciate all you coming in and sticking with these deep topics. And if there's any suggestion of topics, please email me or comment, one of the lessons, and I'll try to incorporate that into my lessons in the future. It helps a lot to be creative that way. Bless up, Sue. Bless up, Andrea. Bless up, Aaron. I don't know, Aaron. Bless up, Miss Carice. Yes, one love. I know it's deep, but I hope I set a good foundation. Because there's a lot more. We didn't even get into Yeriach and Kodesh for the Hebrew. I just dealt with the New Testament because it was easier to deal with, much shorter, but it's going to be the same thing in the Hebrew. Kadash means new, Kodesh means month, Yeriach means moon. For new moon, it should be Kadash, Yeriach, but you don't get that. It doesn't translate that way. All right? All right, bless up, family. One love. Thanks for sticking in. Peace and shalom.